Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to have a very strange episode where we're going to be looking at all of the 3D comics here at the Hercules Academy. There's a special section in our special collections that are just all the 3D comics separated from everything else. 3D comics were invented in the 1950s by Joe Kubert, and I think Norm Saunders helped. They were partners. They figured out how to make a process, and it was a huge boom product for like 3 months. Like the first one sold 1 million copies. So everyone jumped on the bandwagon. Within 3 months, kids were bored of it already, and all these guys were left with all this unwanted inventory and all these returns. I remember reading about these as a kid. You know, everyone heard about 3D comics, but I never saw one because they never made another one again. Well, actually, a few people did. We'll take a look at those soon. But for the most part, 3D comics didn't really exist until there was a boom in the 80s, probably because of Ray Zone. Ray Zone was this dude who championed 3D. He was an expert at it. All of his comics that he does the 3D on, always look for his name. The 3D is always at least twice as good. Sometimes there'll be other guys trying to do 3D. It's never as good as Ray Zone's. There was a huge boom in the 80s. Every company was putting out 3D comics left and right. And that's probably the first time I saw them. And it's such a simple thing. You know, I mean, I had video games and whatever, but I found it so fucking amazing. The first time I looked at 3D, I was like, this is so cool. Even though, you know, I guess I'm just easily amused. So I started collecting them. Luckily, you could find these in quarter bins, you know, all throughout the 80s and 90s. Nobody really cared. Once again, the boom went bust pretty quick. This boom lasted a little longer. It was maybe a couple of years, and then they pretty much mostly stopped for the most part. Then in the early 90s, there was a mini boom, and some 3D comics came out. And then that dried up. So it's weird how people keep rediscovering 3D, thinking it's really cool for a little while, and then getting tired of them. So let's start, guys. Here's the first entry, 3D Alien Terror, published by Eclipse Comics in 1986. We have a painted Tom Yeats cover here, a very strange looking alien. And this is basically, at the time, they had Alien Encounters and Tales of Terror. They had two different anthologies. This was just smushed them together and made 3D stories. Most of these, though, are not stories that appeared in Alien Encounters and Tales of Terror. A lot of these 3D comics are just reprints. These are reprints, but from random places. For example, this first story, Wishing World, written by Mark Evanier and John Pound. We saw this before in the video for Ground Pound, the John Pound collection. It's from a 60s fanzine, Graphic Story Monthly, I think it was called. Kind of a prozine. Beautiful EC homage. And this is just a great comic. Now, I'm just flipping through all of these pages, and I know you guys are thinking, wow, this is the shittiest episode ever. We can't really even see the art. But the reason why I'm doing this is, before I die, I want to display every comic I own. But more importantly, maybe soon, maybe it exists now. Maybe the technology will exist. You'll be able to put a filter on your whatever viewing screen you're looking at, and you'll be able to see 3D. So I'm going to make this video. Who knows? Maybe it'll take 20 years if we're still around then. Maybe in 20 years, someone will have you can just press a button, it'll go, put 3D glasses on, or virtual 3D glasses. But I'll try to go through them quick. I'm not going to get in every story and stuff. Just let you know what's in these. I like how Eclipse, even their ads, they'd make 3D, so you get a bonus cool 3D pinup. This next one, Oral Hygienist. This is written by Jake Lincoln, which is really a pseudonym for Beppe Sabatini. He wrote a lot for these Eclipse anthologies. Art by Jordi Diaz Castrillo, who's a Spanish artist who never did anything else in America. They just got him for this one story. It's nice stuff, even though you might not be able to tell. Once again, an ad in 3D. We have a story in pencils by Keith Tucker, inks by Dave Simmons here. A little sci-fi story. I'm going to try to leave all the pages unobstructed for a second. So if this technology arises, you can always pause it and look at every image. And now we have the master of the short story, Bruce Jones, writing with art by Gray Morrow. Now you see it. This one is Rayzone and some other guy. And I didn't mention, but not all of these are Rayzone, but Rayzone does a couple. Beautiful Gray Morrow art. I think you can at least see some of the faces. Some of the art shines through the 3D process. Another science fiction story in the EC tradition, as Bruce Jones was very good at. He's very good at that. Another ad. And that's that. Next, three-dimensional alien worlds. Before Eclipse published their Alien Encounters comic, Pacific Comics published Alien Worlds. It was canceled. Eclipse picked up the last two issues and then made their own anthology. No, we have a bunch of videos looking at these Alien Worlds, original Alien Worlds comics, and they're the brainchild of Bruce Jones. He wrote almost every story. He was the editor. His amazing writing, well, when he wasn't being really goofy sometimes, but he's a great editor. He has really good taste in art because he's an excellent artist. So there was just amazing stuff. If you want to check them out, you can look under the Amazing Anthologies playlist and check them out. There's some stellar stuff in there. So we start off with a cover by Joe Chiodo, and he used him a lot. And most of these covers are new, so even though the insides are reprints, if you know, for 25 cents, it was just like, oh, you get a nice cover at least, even if you don't have 3D glasses. And you get this beautiful Rick Geary illustration. That's worth $0.25 to me. Introduction for Bruce Jones. We have a story, Fair Play, story by Bruce Jones, pencils by Jim Sullivan, finished art by Dave Stevens. That's a nice art team. Basically, they're just doing Frazetta, and they're doing it well. To be honest, I can't remember if this was an Alien Worlds. My memory's so bad. I don't know if any of these were. Next, we have Bruce Jones and John Bolton, the great English artist. I think all of these are by Rayzone. So the 3D's all really good. So, of course, these are all sci-fi stories. That was Alien Worlds shtick. I'm trying to be like weird science fantasy or something. This is Bruce Jones and Bill Ray. Now, according to Grand Comic Database, none of these are reprints. But sometimes they just don't know. They just don't list it. To be honest, I don't remember any of these stories from rereading those Alien Worlds. But that was like a year and a half ago, and I do have a very shitty memory. So maybe these are all new stories just made for this 3D collection? I don't know. Look at this. Arthur Adams. And this is when, he was pretty young. This comic came out in 84, but... So if these are new stories, that's still pretty early in Arthur Adams' career. If they're reprints, it's way early. It looks good. The little you can see, it looks like Arthur Adams started off pretty damn good. Yeah, this might have been around the same time Long Shot came out. And I love this logo here. It looks very EC. Spaceman Go Home, Bruce Jones, and art by Rand Holmes. Rand Holmes is so good. He's done a few of these EC pastiches over the years, and he's so good at it because he can totally do that Wally Wood, finish, polish to his pencils. It's really slick. Though she would have never appeared in an EC comic. Brand Homes is great. Next, we have AV and 3D. Aardvark Vanheim wanted to get in on the 3D game, but also they just wanted to make a sampler of all their titles at the time. So this came out in 1984, and it's all Ray's own, so it's all good. This is a jam cover with, let me open it up with a wrap around. All the artists drawing their own creations here. So if you're a completist, you got to buy this. I don't think it's ever been reprinted. And we have a Miss Tree story by Max Allen Collins and Terry Beattie, the regular team. I really do not like these comics. I read the first story arc because it was in Eclipse magazine, and I hated it then. And I just never liked that comic. Next, we have a little Flaming Carrot story, The Bandit Moons by Bob Burden. Now, this has been reprinted. In fact, it was reprinted in A1, the anthology comic, another which you can also find in our Amazing Anthologies playlist. I believe it was in A1, number 1, the first volume. This is a fun little story, especially if you like Flaming Carrot. It's got all the absurdity of a Flaming Carrot story that you've come to love. We have a Norma Man story by Jim Valentino. Those are fun comics. I read those all at one point, but I didn't like them enough to keep. But they're definitely worth, they're a fun read. Parody of other comics. And this is reason enough to buy this. This is a 4-page journey story by William Mesner Loebs. Wolverine McAllister doesn't appear in it, but it is from that world. And it's a great little story. And I don't think this has ever been reprinted in, flat. That's what it's called. That's what Ray Zone calls it. When it's not 3D normal art, he calls it flat art. So this is probably the only place you could read this, as far as I know. And if you're a big as Journey fan as I am, then that's something. We have a Neil the Horse story. All of these stories were written and drawn new for this collection. Neil the Horse, by the artist formerly known as Arn Saba, pretty much known for just doing Neil the Horse. Also a really great interviewer. There's some amazing interviews in the Comics Journal I've been reading lately from the 90s, where she's like interviewing like Milt Caniff and all these great comic strip artists. She knows her stuff. And then we have a Dave Sim Cerebus story, Cerebus Dreams 2. This is just a weird little dream comic. Really nice art. And it was made for 3D. There's all these floating figures and things flying around. Okay. This one's a really great one. This has some curiosities in it. This is Bizarre 3D Zone, edited by Ray Zone and published by Blackthorn Publishing in 1986. Ray Zone, I've mentioned this before. I've looked at some of his comics that he's published, and not only is he's the master of 3D, but he's just a great editor. He has great taste in stuff. All the stuff he put out, it was always like really interesting, cool shit. Start off with this beautiful new cover by John Pound. This is so great. Very 80s, but super cool. I mean, that logo alone, that's a great logo. John Pound is a really great graphic designer. I think that's worth the price of admission right there. And then this is crazy. So we start off with this story, Dark Follower, written by longtime DC kind of writer, hackish writer, Jack C. Harris. I don't know if he's ever written a good comic in his life, that guy, but he was there every month writing 2 comics at DC when I was a kid. And drawn by Spain Rodriguez, Underground Comics star. Very weird how these two got, together. And it's just a little tale of horror. Really nice Spain art. These are really interesting. I never heard of this guy. Story and Pencils by Terry Stroud, inks by John Pound, July 4th, 1976. And it's this very kind of arty comic. It's barely a comic. It's not sequential narrative. It's just, it's a comic, I guess, because it's in panels. But it's just random, photorealistic. Maybe these are photos. I can't even tell. I think some of them are. But John Pound is pretty slick. He could make it look like photos. Just random snapshots of people. It's almost like photojournalism, where he's just like, it's the bicentennial. Let's just go out and show vignettes, images of what we see. Parade floats, random people in the crowd. I really like it. The art's really nice. But it is just like almost like this little artsy piece of just like, oh, okay. Bunch of people. Bunch of images of things. And then we have something very kind of similar, a lot more fun though. This one's called Zone 1, and there's going to be a bunch of zones in here. Now the credits just say Terry Stroud, William Stout, John Pound, but I'm going to assume maybe it's Terry Stroud writing and drawing again, and then William Stout and John Pound inking. But who knows? And this is great. This is just like 6 sketches on a page of just random, weird, surreal, beautifully drawn stuff. William Stout and John Pound are such facile artists. They're so good. They've got such great styles. Here's Zone 2, same dealio. And then, just to show how weird and eclectic this comic is, we have a comic with story and pencils by Mike Sikowski. Old school DC artist, did like 100 issues of the JLA. Inks by Carol Lay, alternative cartoonist. This is called like The Wrath of Rombor. It's some kind of science fiction story, but kind of humorous, Now I can't stop wondering, is this 3D technology out there? Is there an app or some kind of thing where you could see 3D through a computer screen? I don't know. I doubt it. Here's some more of these, another zone. Just weird random images. And here we have a story by Scott Shaw, Gibson on Parade. Looks kind of fun, as Scott Shaw's stuff usually does. It's a very fun style. Here's Zone 4. And I'm sorry, these the later zones after number 1 do have some kind of sequentiality to them. They're telling some weird little, at least showing a scene, a nebulous scene from something. It's not just random sketches of weird things. And then this is crazy. Then a Robert Williams story, Space Waif. This is from Exit Magazine, which was a hip 80s artsy magazine that had some comics in it. I think I have an issue somewhere. It was oversized, super rare. So the fact, this is probably the only place you could find this. Then again, this comic is probably super rare at this point. Because, it's probably a lot of them have just been recycled at this point. But this such a weird, eclectic list of contributors in this. We have Zone 5 here. And Zone 6. This one gets full on, just like op art. This looks really groovy with the glasses on. And hopefully with that app, which will one day come out. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs in 3D. Kitchen Sink Comics. And this is from... What is this from? Oh, I didn't write it down. Oh, there it is. 1992. So this is from that second mini boom. This is nice. It's got cardstock covers. And this is just reprints of Mark Schultz's Xenozoic Tales stories. Renamed Cadillacs and Dinosaurs because I believe at the time the cartoon came out called Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, which adapted his work. These stories. I never really got into Xenozoic Tales, but his art's really good. Very classic. Al Williamson, Frank Frazetta. He could have been an EC artist, He had the chops. And he just seemed to come out of nowhere. They're fun, though. Some weird science fiction concept where time gets all screwy, and all of a sudden, all times have mishmash. So people are still have their cars and their guns, but then dinosaurs are running around. And I'm sure you can barely see it, but you can very much see like the Frazetta Williamson. Maybe even a little Roy Crinkle. Maybe the whole Flegel gang's in there. Angelo Torres. So there's a bunch of stories, a bunch of little short stories reprinted. I think Senor Tales was always like that. He'd always just have like 2 or 3 8-page stories in each issue. Trying to be even more like EC, you know? God, I really hope that there's a 3D app out there. Nice little pinup. Even the ads in 3D. This is by some guy named Roger May. He did the 3D on this. Seems like he did a lot of 3D. He's got his own business. Next, we have 3-Dimensional Destroy. This is a fun comic. I don't know if you guys ever read Destroy. This was originally published, flat. It was a giant comic, like bigger than those old Raws, or as big. And it was one of the first things Scott McCloud did. I think he did this even before Zot. And I guess a few years later, Eclipse thought it would be perfect for 3D. And it is, because all it is, it was advertised as the loudest comic book in the universe. The whole joke of 3D Destroy, the original Destroy, was Scott McCloud was parodying superheroes and how all they do is fight. So it's just the dumbest comic ever, but that's the point. Just 2 guys just violently trying to destroy each other. I think that's the only word spoken in the whole comic, or destroy. So look at this. This is made for 3D. Especially when the action starts. We got like the good guy superhero, Captain Maximum. And then we have this supervillain type guy. Or an anti-hero. And they just start fighting. And they basically destroy New York City. I think both of these versions are equally great. The giant version's great because it's such a loud comic that needs to stretch out on the page, but also putting in 3D was a brilliant move on Eclipse's part. Like, look at this. It's almost like Scott McCloud drew this knowing it was going to be made into 3D. All these rocks flying off the page. Already it kind of has a 3D effect. Even in between here, in the gutter, there's rubble. This is going to be a very long episode, I fear. Like, look at this. This is an amazing one, too. I'm going to try to flip as quickly as I can. I love that back cover, too. Very nice design. So this is the one I was talking about earlier. This is in, I think, 1970 around. Kitchen Sink Enterprises published an underground comic in 3D. Because, Dennis Kitchen liked all old-timey stuff, nostalgia stuff. He loved old jukeboxes, 78 records. So he just thought as a novelty, he was like, wow, we got to put out a 3D comic. This is all written and drawn by Don Glassford, who was in lots of kitchen sink stuff. So he does this cover. And unfortunately, all the pages have faded. But I could not believe how good the 3D still looks, even on these faded pages. When I put the glasses on, I was like, these look great. Like, it's amazing that, he found someone who probably some guy from the 50s, some old guy who did 3D. Really smart idea too, because imagine how many like hippies on LSD were just like their minds were blown buying this comic, putting on the glasses while they're tripping. I did that a few times whenever I took LSD as a youngster. I just liked hanging out in my house, looking at cool stuff and drawing, listening to music. And I even have like a stack of things to look at just so I was ready. And a lot of it was Zap comics and definitely some of my 3D comics. And it was wicked. I'm kind of in all 3D comics anyway. I still don't quite understand how they work. That's how dumb I am with science and stuff. I'm like, I don't really get it. But yeah, like how fade this is, but I couldn't believe how it looks great in 3D. Somehow it goes through the faded paper. And if they never invent an app, hey, wait, there's a little Jay Lynch strip in here, Nard and Pat. I didn't realize that. If they ever never make a 3D app, this will be just a really stupid episode. You guys you can't really see any of the art. This is really for me, just for the archives. Because I want to have everything. But I'm just thinking, God, if one day, if there is that app, this could be a wicked fun video. You get all this 3D stuff. Next, we have Disney's comics in 3D. This came out, this was published when Disney had their own comic company, Disney Comics. It was published in 92, and this covers by Ed Murrieta and Ian Aiken, and it's got some nice stuff in it, but also it's just because I love 3D. I don't know if I'd necessarily seek this comic out, even though it's got Carl Barks and Don Rosa in it. But I just have the reprints of that stuff. We start off with a nice Carl Barks story, Knights of the Flying Sleds. And this is all Rayzone 3D, so the 3D is really top notch. Rayzone really got his name out there. Even the big companies like Marvel, DC, when they did a 3D comic every now and then, they sought out Rayzone. They knew he was like the gold standard. Also, he was like the only guy doing it for a long time. So he pops up all over the place doing weird little underground alternative stuff and doing like Batman in 3D for DC. We have a DuckTales story, and this is by John Lustig writer, William Van Horn penciler. Did tons of stuff for DC in the 80s and 90s. He also did that comic in Critters, that Fantagraphics Funny Animal anthology. I think it was about dragons or something. Yeah, now that I actually kind of have a lot of Barks to read, I've seen how good he is. His comic's more valuable to me now. I think even then I like Don Rosa. This is great. We get just a little 2-page centerfold of a Floyd Gottfredson Mickey Mouse page. And here we get the Don Rosa story, The Curse of Nostradamus. No, Nostradamus, I meant to say. Oh, God, Don Rosa's so good. Once again, the ads are even in 3D. I like when they do that. And we end with another Barks story. So you get 2 Carl Barks stories, a Don Rosa story, and some primo Rayzone 3D. And I'm sure you'll find this in a dollar bin, or you won't have to pay a lot. And that's it for that one. Next we got the 3D Zone presents, or just the 3D Zone #1 presents Wallace Wood in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And this is a reprint of a 50s comic that adapts Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. It's a little misguiding to be like Wallace Wood in. He doesn't appear as Dr. Jekyll, he draws it. And I think this is when Harry Harrison was his assistant, kind of helping him out with inking, just like the very early ECs. And so 3D Zone started his own comic company. We've looked at some of their stuff before. Not all of them are in 3D. That Piz comic we looked at maybe a year ago. And they're all just so much fun. I'm going to show off like a bunch today. But this is the first one. And he just cherry-picked the history of comics. Just doing all this great stuff and applying his amazing zone vision too. I wish I had this flat. This is like very early Wally Wood. This is like before he was at EC. But he's still pretty damn good. Of course, just within 2 years from this, it'd be fucking just phenomenal. He kind of makes Mr. Hyde look like a werewolf. Yeah, it's interesting picking out like a certain face. You'll be like, oh yeah, that's Wally Wood. Sometimes you can't see it at all because, his art changed because he's pretty young here. He kind of looks dapper. He's like a dapper monster there. That looks really groovy without the glasses. Very psychedelic. This is kind of a fun little extra 3D funny photo news. Just pictures of all these professionals in 3D. Jack Kirby, Scott McCloud, a few others. And then we have this, in the original comic, this was the backup, and it's also a Wally Wood little horror story. The Repulsive Dwarf. This one is by another guy. So Rayzone doesn't do the 3D on this one. Next, we have 3D Exotic Beauties, another Rayzone edited comic. This is such a coup. So this came out in, I believe, 1990. And I see the cover here. It's like, oh, L.B. Cole. He actually got L.B. Cole to do a new cover in 1990. The guy hadn't drawn since like 56 or something, 55, since the whole Wortham thing. And somehow Rayzone tracked this guy down, got him to do a cover. You can kind of tell it's kind of crude. You can tell this guy hasn't drawn in a while. Like, he's not the L.B. Cole from 1952, But wow, I thought that was really interesting. So this one, I guess the theme is Oriental Jeopardy. So has a reprint of this slave girl story. And this is by a guy named Warren King. Looks pretty good. This is from the Golden Age. Kind of good girl art. This is why Wortham was so pissed off. We have a little 3D gallery. We have old prints from like illustrated versions of the Arabian Nights. We have some Fu Manchu pulp drawings, including this one by this guy, John Richard Flanagan. It's really nice. Nice stuff. And some more of these old book illustrations that Rayzone applied 3D to. Next we have Mr. Zinn, the Hatchet Killer. Oh, it's actually Scott Hunter of the CID meets Mr. Zinn. This is by a guy named Paul Parker, but that really sounds like a pseudonym to me, pen name. But GCD had no information about it. It looks like some primo golden age, though, stuff. Some 50s pre-code. Sauciness is going on here. A lot of these 3D comics, it's like, even if you don't like 3D, they've got shit that I haven't found anywhere. There's some of the contents in some of these, like that bizarre 3D zone I showed you. I was just like, I've never even heard of this. It's like, it's almost like the only way to get it is here. It's more of these pinups. Kind of funny looking. Next, another 3D zone. This is number 8, High Seas 3D. And now this reprints a complete 3D comic from the 50s from, Joe Kubert's company and Norman Maurer but now, this is what a nerd he is. This cover, by the way, is Joe Kubert. Ray Zone actually didn't apply 3D to this. He found the original cell acetates. That's how they used to do it, just like animated cartoons. And this first story is a son of Sinbad, I guess was this character. Had a few issues. Ransom of Shipwreck Shoals by, this is all Joe Kubert. And, it's from a comic called Daring Adventures 3D number 1. So Ray Zone actually printed this in the original type of 3D comics, not like his patented Zone Vision. And you can tell a lot of this 3D in this, it's all about how the panels almost look like it's a window into this world where everything's behind this little window you're looking through. It definitely has a different effect. It's pretty good, though. This Flying Dutchman comic is by an unknown artist and writer, as is the Sword of Islam story. All look pretty good, though. Yeah, some of this art is totally sharp. But we do know who did this. Battle for Ilana. This is a young Bernard Krigstein. Once again, I've never seen this reprinted, except in the big Bernard Krigstein book, which cost $75. But back in the 80s when this came out, I never saw this. There was no place to read this except here in 3D. The Grim Galapagos, another unknown artist. Just a little nature page. St. John's Comics had a lot of these, like, informational, educational pages. Captain Bligh. Here's a comic about Gulliver. Also, I don't know who drew this one. But it all looks good. St. John's was just at a pretty high standard. All their stuff looks pretty sharp. That's Sergio Aragones in an ad here. That's a weird picture. 3D color photo. Here's a 3D zone number 10. Jet 3D. This is another issue that completely reprints a 50s comic, Jet Powers. And let me look up on my little list here. I wrote down all the information in here. There it is. This reprints the entire contents of Jet Power number 3, but with 3D added. So this is drawn by Bob Powell. GCD says they don't know who wrote it, but Bob Powell wrote a lot of his own stuff. So perhaps he wrote it as well. So this is just kind of typical science fiction stuff. Flash Gordon-y. He's almost like a space superhero. But that's just okay. But this Space Age story is by Al Williamson. And this is him in full-on Alex Raymond mode. This is some gorgeous stuff. Look at this. I mean, from what you can see, the way he draws this woman here. This looks like some Flash Gordon comic strips. I've never seen these either anywhere. Definitely worth the price of admission. This is some great stuff. And I believe that's before EC as well. And then we have a third Jet Power story by Bob Powell. I'm trying to pause like a half a second, so it's not too hard to pause if you ever get that app. It's so goofy. There's just a picture of a jet because it's called Jet 3D. 3D Zone number 5, Crazy Cat by George Herriman. This is great. Just beautiful Crazy Cat pages in 3D. So when Ignatz throws that brick, it comes out right at you and creases your bean. Look how groovy that looks. These are actually almost nice to look at without the glasses. This is crazy, groovy effect going on. This looks really cool, actually. Look at that. It's like something from like UPA animation in the 50s. Like kind of hip style. So just all beautiful, brilliant, Crazy Cat strips. They even do some dailies here. A nice little pinup. A little biographical note about Herriman. And a self-portrait by Herriman. Next we have Miracle Man 3D number 1. I don't think there was ever number 2. This was published by Eclipse. This cover is by Mick Austin. One of the early painterly artists. He's from England, and this one's interesting because a lot of these other ones are reprint archival stuff. This actually fits in between Miracle Man 3 and 4, which were being published right then. A month before this, Miracle Man 3 came out, and Alan Moore has this story, which is basically reprints, but he has a framing device which puts it all in context, and it actually fits within the Miracle Man continuity. It's reprinted from the Miracle Man special, published in England. Just like all the early Miracle Man was published by Eclipse. It was just reprints of the stuff that was in Warrior. So Alan Moore's writing, Alan Davis's drawing. These are some of the best superhero comics ever made. And now we see the reprints. And these are all written by Mick Anglo. He was the creator of Miracle Man. And they're joined by random guys. Don Lawrence was one of the artists. Ray Parker. These guys that he probably might have never heard of. I guess Don Lawrence went on to do the Trigon Empire and like other... He became a famous English comic artist, but not to most Americans. So it's very clean, straight, 50s stuff. And then we have interludes of the Alan Moore, Alan Davis modern stuff, to frame it. I'm pretty sure they reprinted this stuff flat. But if you have the original back when I was collecting Miracle Man, this was essential. It was like, oh, okay, this is part of the story. Because Alan Moore, he really crammed stuff in. This is a great... This ad looks crazy for Mr. Monster. Okay, some more of these old-timey stories. And then back to the framing device to round out the issue. Speaking of which, Mr. Monsters, high-octane 3D horror. This is the first super-duper Mr. Monster special. The other ones weren't in 3D. They're really fun. One day we're going to take a look at all of these. Beautiful Michael T. Gilbert cover, the creator of Mr. Monster. He does the first story here. God, and he drew it just for 3D, you know, like he knew this was going to be a 3D comic. Really good Michael Gilbert stuff. And so we start off with a Joe Kubert reprint. Picture of Evil. I don't know who the writer is. I don't think anyone does. Really nice stuff. This is early 50s, you know, when he was working for St. John's. You know, coming up with Tor the Caveman, all that stuff. We have a really great informative little kind of page here from Michael Gilbert, telling us about all these stories, giving us a bio of Joe Kubert, and even giving us the original splash page. So this, I guess, Picture of Hell was a flat comic, a normal comic. They reprinted it in this 3D comic, in a 3D comic back then, and redrew the splash page, I guess, to be more 3D-ish. Let's see, actually, how 3D-ish they made it. I forgot. Oh, yeah, look, it's like more, wow, he's coming out at you. Really interesting page, though. I'm glad they reprinted that. For the first time in 3D, no less. This is a really cool little story. I think I have this somewhere flat. This is Michael T. Gilbert. By the way, guys, this is all Ray's own 3D throughout this comic. And this is so perfect for 3D, but even without the glasses, it's almost perfect. Because Michael T. Gilbert would experiment with styles. And this one, it's like really crazy, angular, expressionistic art. It's called The Damned. And it kind of looks really cool with these flashes of color. He's experimenting with storytelling, doing all this crazy stuff. It's really cool. I think this is in that Strange Brew comic that we looked at. It's a collection of all of Michael T. Gilbert's shorts. Oh, this looks cool as hell. Without the glasses. But you can't really tell what's going on. It's kind of hard. Another nice, very informative page about Bob Powell, because now we're going to see a Bob Powell story. The Blind, the Doomed, and the Dead. I have a feeling we recently looked at this flat. It was in some anthology. But of course, I don't know. My memory's terrible. Seems familiar to me. Maybe he was in that Art Out of Time book or Art in Time. A last little page by Michael T. Gilbert, rounding out the issue. A letters page. More of these 3D ads. Good stuff. And then years later, they came out with Mr. Monster's Triple Threat 3D. And this is co-published with Rayzone's, little publishing concern. Gilbert Studios and Rayzone present this. And it's got an embossed cover by Michael T. Gilbert. Pretty fancy. Cardstock. It's in thrilling Scullo-vision. Introduction by Michael T. Gilbert. And the first bit of art is by Michael T. Gilbert. Look at that. That's kind of fun. Yeah, this came out in 93. So this is just all pinups. Sometimes splash pages. I think there's one little short story. It's all by Rayzone. We got Michael T. Gilbert. We got the original artist, Fred Kelly. This is the original Golden Age Mr. Monster splash page. This is a splash page of the very first, modern Mr. Monster story. Michael T. Gilbert and William Mesner Loebs helping with the art. Well, doing most of the art, actually. Here's Terry Beatty, speaking of Ms. Tree, doing a little homage to Kirby. Mr. Monster meets Kerberu. Here's Michael T. Gilbert paying homage to EC Comics. Alan Moore drawing Mr. Monster. This is a reprint. This was in an issue of Mr. Monster. I remember that. Michael T. Gilbert. This was the cover of the comic we just looked at. But that wasn't in 3D, so it was the first time it's in 3D. Here's another splash page from another Mr. Monster story by Michael T. Gilbert and William Mesner Loebs. Here's Mr. Monster meeting Concrete. So Paul Chadwick and Michael T. Gilbert jam on this. This is very interesting. Paul Olswang, the Oregon-based cartoonist, he did a bunch of comics for Fantagraphics. He's in here. And you can't really barely see Mr. Monster. He doesn't even look like him. But very interesting. Another splash page, this time just by Michael T. Gilbert, I believe. Michael T. Gilbert again. Splash page. This is a nice double page spread by centerfold by Brian Buniak. He did a lot of Mr. Monster stuff. There's Dennis Kitchen drawing Mr. Monster. That's so great. And he made it especially for 3D with all these flying critters around to make it look extra fun. But this is even weirder. Kim and Simon Deitch. We see Mr. Monster shooting at this typical Deitchian monster. Michael T. Gilbert. Can't remember. Oh, this is Tom Sutton's in here. I forgot to mention, I should have pointed that out. This contents page here, this is all Tom Sutton. And you can tell when you look at it, it's really gorgeous. It's like his Elric stuff he did. Jeff Bonnevert, again. Michael T. Gilbert splash page. One of the Mr. Monster covers reprinted. Another one, this one by Dave Stevens. Oh, I'm sorry, that was the first Jeff Bonnevert. Now here's Jeff Bonnevert again. One of the most unique styles in comics history. Just such a weirdo. Another Mr. Monster cover. Another splash page by Gilbert. And then we have this little story here, which is Michael T. Gilbert script layouts and inks. Raul Vazina, finished pencils. He was the guy who did that Smilin' Ed comic back in the 70s and 80s for Fanico. I don't have much by him, but I just remember those ads for Smilin' Ed. So this is the one story you get, which is nice because I don't know where the hell else you'd find this, the flat version. We have this other alternate cover, and it's kind of groovy. This is embossed as well. This crazy cover. This is by a guy named Lyndall Ferguson. Never heard of him before. Look at all this craziness down here, and this is all embossed. It's got texture to it. Next, this is kind of a curiosity. It's the Rocketeer 3D comic. If you notice, it has no cover price because this came in a package with a cassette tape, and you were supposed to listen along. It was 3D sound while you read the 3D comic. As you can see, cover art by Neil Adams. Neil Adams and Continuity Associates does all the art inside. And Ray Zone does all of the 3D. Here's a little picture of Ray Zone. And this is just an adaptation of the Rocketeer movie. The script for the adaptation is by some guy named Ron Kidd. And it's just pretty much a straight adaptation of the Rocketeer movie. But at the time, it was hard to find Neil Adams art. Neil Adams wasn't doing much comics. So this was really weird when it came out. I remember I was just like, wow, Neil Adams is drawing a comic. That's crazy. Maybe I should say a comic that wasn't from his crappy Continuity Comics company. Because those were just all terrible. Except for Echo from Future Past, of course. So this looks like very classic, fun Neal Adams art. Even though a lot of it's other artists trying to draw in his style, his studio. Oh, that must look great in 3D, huh? I bet you wish you could see it like that, huh? I'm sure nobody's watching this video at this point. They're just like, fuck this. But seriously, guys, look to the future. Have faith. I'm sure one day you'll be able to watch this video in full, glorious 3D. Just such a sucker for the Neal Adams style. I don't think I ever won't be. When I was like 6, I just first saw his art and fell in love, and I still love it. You can definitely tell, though, this isn't all Neal Adams. There's some clunky stuff in here. For the most part, though, pretty nice. Oh man, this is gonna be like 2 hours, this video. Even the ads are 3D, which is nice. And that's it for that. Next, we have Roger Rabbit in 3D. Roger Rabbit had a regular title from Disney Comics in the early 90s because the movie was so successful. They were kind of fun, actually. I kind of liked them. This is a pretty cool cover. This cover, by the way, is by, I wrote this down. Hold on a second. It's John Costanza, longtime letterer, inked by Dave Hunt. That's really like good Tex Avery type stuff going on. So this is all Ray Zone again. That's probably why I still own it. Most of these stories are written by Doug Rice and drawn by some guy named Bill Langley. Doug Rice, he did worked with Hilary Barta. He did comics for First. Remember First Comics? He did Dynamo Joe. And but for the past, for at least a decade or so, he was just working for Disney, working on the Disney properties. So here we go. Seems like Roger Rabbit's pretty perfect to make 3D since he's always pulling that Tex Avery shit. You know, eyes bulging out, bouncing all over the place. These comics look really energetic and fun. I should reread this. They really look like they're capturing that zany cartoon style. This second story is the only one not written by Doug Rice, and this is written by Jim Braderick, who did that wacky squirrel comic that Dark Horse published. Pencils are by John Costanza, the cover artist, and longtime letterer. Let me see if this is the same. Yeah, I guess it's all Ray Zone. It's a shame these comics didn't last because, I don't really buy a lot of them or read them, but it just seems I want there to be on newsstands or comic stores. I want there to be funny animal comics, just like there always was. There's always some funny animal comic. It just seems like it should be represented. And for a little while, Disney Comics was doing its best. Of course, Gladstone started the whole ball rolling, Gladstone Comics, but Disney had more presence on the newsstands. So there you go. Next we have Jerry Iger's Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, 3D #1. This is from Blackthorn Publishing, and it's from 1985. This is all Ray Zone, a new Dave Stevens cover, and if there's a character who I want Dave Stevens to draw more than Sheena, I don't know, maybe Psylocke. So, these are all reprints of early 40s Sheena stories. We get a nice introduction that continues on the inside back cover from Jerry Iger, who was there at the creation of Sheena. It was his comic shop that it emanated from. And nobody knows who wrote these, even though it says W. Morgan Thomas. That's like Bob Kane, on Batman. It doesn't mean he wrote or drew anything. But the art is by Bob Webb on this first story. So this is just the sui generis of good girl art. Sheena. Kids like Tarzan, they like Jungle Tales. Well, let's throw some tits into the mix. And then you'll really like it. And they did. Sheena was very popular. Here's a kind of funny story. It's like a parody called Snarzan the Ape. It's by this guy. His name is Lamuse with 2 L's. It's probably a pen name. But what I can see of the cartooning through the 3D effect, it's really good. It looks like really funny cartooning, Really nice stuff. Congo King. And this is by Matt Baker. Unfortunately, he's not drawing Sheena, because Matt Baker could really draw women well. So well that Wortham singled him out as like, hey, he draws women a little too well. You can totally, it's too easy to jerk off to these women because he draws them so hot. And then we finish off with the Sheena story once again by that Bob Webb guy. These are kind of fun and salacious. They look spicy. That's what they look like. Here's the end of that Jerry Iger piece. Very informative. Next, we have Space Hawk 3D. This is the 3D Zone number 18. Nice base of Wolverton cover. Cardstock covers. And also his editorials are always very informative. Ray Zone is definitely a comics historian. He knows his stuff. So we get Space Hawk stories by Cesar Wolverton. We looked at these before. Some really great stuff. Probably looks extra wonky in 3D. More Space Hawk. Oh God, this looks so trippy. With all the Wolverton's lines and then the 3D effect thrown over it. It's almost like I can see the more dimensions without the glasses. I don't even need the glasses. These ridiculous aliens. So goofy looking. I love it. We have a little gallery of Basil Wolverton art. Here's a Space Hawk drawing. Splash page from Space Patrol, one of his very first comics. USA Rockman, Underground Secret Agent. That was the comic he did for Timely. Look at this kind of pulp illustration. That's amazing. And then we get another Space Hawk comic. This is from the later lame era of Space Hawk, where the editors were like, oh, he should stay on Earth so he can fight the Nazis instead of having amazing space adventures. So ridiculous. I'm still bitter about it. They ruined Space Hawk. Next we have 3D Three Stooges. There's 3 issues. I only have 2 and 3. But Paul Galassi cover. Very odd. Very strange. And these are reprints of the Three Stooges comics by the guys, one of the guys who introduced 3D comics to the world, Norman Maurer, Joe Kubert's partner. His cartooning is so wonderful. I mean, it's this funny style, almost like he could have been in Mad Magazine. So these are just goofy comics about the Three Stooges, and I love Norman Maurer's art, even though you can't really see it here. I would love to get a collection of these comics just, flat. I'm sure they're really boneheaded. I doubt I'll laugh once, but I just really like his cartooning so much. Very detailed, but very comical and silly. Here we have this magic page where you cover one eye, make things disappear. That's a great almost 2-page spread. There's that Alien Encounters comic I was talking about from Eclipse. I took over after Alien Worlds. Some ads. Oh, this is interesting. This is the cover of the first issue. And people were like, oh, you got to put that in 3D. Look, the fingers are coming out at you anyway. So they did. So this is the first time we see that Paul Galassi art in 3D. Now we have a Jim Engel caricature on the back page. Jim Engel of Dick Duck Duck Dick fame, which probably doesn't mean anything to any of you out there, except maybe my brother remembers. So here's number 3. This time we have a cover by Stan Walk, who did stuff on Swamp Thing, Kubert school grad. And we just got more of this Norman Maurer greatness going on. More zany antics of the Three Stooges. This is a reprint from, well, actually, we're going to see what it's a reprint from very soon. This is a parody of Dick Tracy, and it's by Norman Maurer, Defective Comics. And from what I can see, well, actually, we'll see it later. It looks like it's a pretty good parody of Chester Gould. Then we have 3DTs, which is like one of those Stan Lee comics in the backup of Spider-Man or Fantastic Four, where it's the artist and writer talking and being silly. So this is Joe Kubert, it's in here, Norman Maurer, all the guys who worked at this company, and it's written and drawn by Kubert and Maurer. So it's just a very silly, self-referential comic. These guys were obviously reading the early Mads. Oh wait, yeah, they were. This stuff is definitely from the post-Mad humor comic boom. And now we're back to the normal Three Stooges by Norman Maurer. That looks crazy. Some of these effects look really cool without the glasses, inadvertently, you know. Here's a lost page from Three Stooges #1 from 1949, now in 3D. I'm sorry, this is the original cover. Sorry, I meant to say. Next, we have another Rayzone production. This is Rayzone #17, Thrilling Love. Robert Williams cover. And this is all pre-code romance comics. This is Jack Kamen and Al Feldstein. They were a team before they went over to EC. I think Jack Kamen penciled and Feldstein inks. Either way, you can see both of their styles in this. My Marriage Was Doomed. This came out in 1989, this 3D comic. Typical romance comic. But a little saucy. A little ribald. And then we just have a splash page from one of their stories. I was a stepmother at 20. Imagine the shame. Now we have just 2 splash pages from Ross Andrew and Mike Esposito. And this is the original 3D. This was, I guess there weren't that many 3D romance comics, but they did 2 of them. And this is from those. And Rayzone somehow figured out how to duplicate the original 3D. Next, we have My Secret Husband by Wally Wood. This is very early Wally Wood. This is just a splash page, though. But now we get a full story from him. Oh, not yet. Sorry, another splash page. You can see the Wally Wood women, even though their bodies aren't as va-va-voom as they would be in 2 or 3 years. They're a little scrawny for Wally Wood women. Oh, I guess that's all we get from Wally Wood, these splash pages. This is an unknown artist. I was a spoiled brat. But then we have a story called Spoiled Brat, with art by Bill Ward of Torchy fame. Or you might know him, well, not younger readers, older readers, but younger than this, will know him from drawing Nanny Dickering in Cracked magazine. For many, many years. Oh, Nanny Dickering. I used her so much as a teenager. She was the hottest thing I could get my hands on. God, Bill Ward, the way he draws the hair is so great. Yeah, he definitely adds a lot of sex appeal to these typical romance comics. And then Frank Frazetta shows up. This is from 53, so this is right around the time he was doing comics for EC, too. Too Late for Love. Oh, man. He admitted in an interview he specifically designed her to look like Betty Page. Once again, a comic artist steals the image of Betty Page for one of his characters. It's amazing just how good he was. Such gorgeous art. This is the cover of Romantic Adventures, an American Comics Group title. They had this thing called True Vision 3D effect. There's no glasses because it wasn't 3D. They just drew the comic to have a 3D-ish effect where the backgrounds would be kind of, sketchy. And then they have the screen so it looked like the person was popping out from the background. It's so pathetic. And these are from like 1899. These little stereoscopic, tells a little story. Suffering Flesh. Kind of amazing to see that. Next we have Tor 3D #1 from Eclipse Comics. This came out in 1980. Oh, I don't know. Sometime in the mid-80s. Joe Kubert provides new covers. Oh, it says 1986 there, so I assume that's when it came out. So this alone is worth buying these comics for. It's a new Tor image. And these are reprints of his great Caveman comic from the 50s. God, this is nice stuff. Joe Kubert, I believe, wrote and drew these. He definitely drew them, but I think he wrote them too. I don't know why it has the dimensions of a magazine. These were published in comics. They had these little educational pages about dinosaurs. These are all by Russ Heath. This is almost like getting a great DC War comic from the early 70s. Heath and Kubert. This is a Norman Mauer story, The Wizard of Ugh. Once again, amazing, fun, cartoony art. God, look how dense this is. It's like my eyeball is getting confused. Here's another Tor story by Kubert. Yeah, really weird how the dimensions are all... I don't think the Tor comic was magazine-sized. And another Tor comic. This looks really cool, even without the glasses. We have another dinosaur page from Russ Heath and Danny Dreams. And these, I think, were inked by Norman Mauer. They were Kubert, but Mauer helped out. I have these all in flat form when DC reprinted these in the 70s. And I also have #2. Another new Joe Kubert cover. Amazing stuff. And just more of the same. But now it's Tor and Chi-Chi, his monkey friend. Educational page here. I think that's by Heath too. Danny Dreams, once again by Kubert and Maurer. Another educational page by Heath. Tor and Chi-Chi again by Kubert solo. I really love Tor. I think I've told you guys I really like caveman fiction. Something about it. We looked at those Kong the Untamed. We read that Ham comic in Echoes from Future Past. I'm just a sucker for this kind of stuff. Tor is a really good one. Even though they fudge history and like Tor fights dinosaurs and stuff. 3D Zone number 2 presents the weird tales of Basil Wolverton. Oh, that's such a classic image. So crude and yet so nightmarish. So these are a lot of his horror comics from the 50s. Basil Wolverton. All with Ray Zone color. 3D effects. God, that's so good. Just love Wolverton. Flight to the Future, another one. They were like all kind of sci-fi horror. Escape to Death. This is really nice. This is a Doomsday 3D Gallery. And these are the drawings that he did for a Bible publisher. These are like illustrating Armageddon. But these are more horrific than most of his horror comics. These are amazing. And in 3D, they're pretty fucking awesome. Look at these. Horrific. This is scarier than Brain Bats from Venus. Oh, look at that. I think this is after the rapture. Can you imagine being in church and opening a Bible book and these are the illustrations? I would have totally stole every Bible from the pews. Look at that. That's amazing. I can't believe that was for a Christian publisher. Here, speaking of which, The Brain Bats of Venus is classic tale of horror. And The Man from the Moon, another classic. I mean, all these stories are pretty classic. They've been reprinted so much because they've been in the public domain for a long time. And here it is, guys. This is probably the rarest comic I own. This is Whack, #1. Or maybe it's called 3-Dimension Comics featuring Whack. And this was published by that St. John's company. And it was, like many comics did at the time. It was trying to be Mad Magazine or Mad Comic Book because Mad was such a sensation after the first few issues. Every company cranked out one. But these are pretty good. Unfortunately, the pages have faded so much. And here's that Ghastly Defective comics we just saw reprinted in the Three Stooges one. Of course, looking very different. But you know, the 3D still works. Tales of the Woolly West, starring Hoot Man. And this one is by a guy named Carl Hubble. It looks really good. The little I can see. It just looks like really great, funny cartoon art. It's kind of a lost art. I think so many young comic book artists now grow up just like, I want to draw superheroes. I want to draw like cool stuff. Not many guys are coming up being like, yeah, I want to draw like Karl Marx. Here's that 3DT story we just saw. This is where it was originally published. I think I got this comic too for like $1 or $2. It was crazy. I was like, what the hell is this doing here at this price? This one's called Animated Horror Comics, Mouse of Evil. And this is almost like an underground comic. It's a Mickey Mouse parody, but it's like really gnarly. Like Mickey Mouse is a real bastard. Like Minnie Mouse is all dressed up in a slinky dress. This is by Dave Berg. The lighter side of Dave Berg. He was so much better as a young man. He could actually draw in the 50s. And then we have this grim fairy tale. This is unknown, but it looks really good. And I believe this one's unknown as well. Or this could be the Norman Mauer. Yes, this is a Norman Mauer. And even the ads were 3D. Next we have Will Eisner's 3D Classics featuring The Spirit. Even the cover looks 3D by Will Eisner, even though it's not. I think this might be a new cover he made just for this. This is from Kitchen Sink Comics. Came out in 1985. And this is just some classic Spirit stories given the 3D treatment by Ray Zone. And these are all post-war Spirit stories, so it's all the good stuff. It's all the best of the Spirit. So just some good stuff. I think at the time, when this came out, there weren't many Spirit reprints. I mean, there was those big black and white magazines, but I never saw them in my comic store. And so when this came out, I was like, oh, wow, at least I get to read the Spirit more. It wasn't, I mean, I like the 3D, but it's also like, oh, at the time it was hard to find all the Spirits. Okay, let me get this page. And there's that. And guys, this is the piece de resistance. You might have seen this in ads. This is from Fantagraphics. Frank in the Third Dimension. Jim Woodring with 3D effects by Charles Bernard. I'm sure they would have utilized Ray Zone's talents, but he was dead at this point. This is just big, kind of a fat book, but it's really not, because all the pages are made of cardboard, not cardstock, full pieces of cardboard. So let's just go through this. Guys, look at this. Even without the 3D glasses, that's pretty fucking groovy, right? Let me center this. These seem to be all disconnected. I don't think this tells a story. It's just various kind of pinups of Frank. This one's kind of enjoyable, even without glasses. The 3D doesn't get in the way. I think it's because it's a modern 3D effect. It seems like the foreground characters aren't that obstructed by red and green lines. Oh man, every one of these is a masterpiece. Jim Woodring's so good. Unfortunately, a lot of these don't really seem to take advantage of the 3D process. They're all kind of on the same level, almost theatrical in the setting. Like this, it's just like they're all on the same plane. Like, why couldn't that guy be running towards us? Or see what I mean? At least have one of them holding a paddle ball, making it go towards us. But whatever. I can't complain. This is just beautiful Jim Woodring stuff. And then given another dimension. I guess it's all done on computers now. It's like a computer program. So it's a lot easier than when Orizon had to do it. Oh, that's crazy. I just love how Frank is so cute and so nightmarish at once, all at once. Beautiful stuff. I just love this book. You could use it as a weapon. You could whack someone upside the head with this pretty hard. And I've never taken them out because it's almost like they're collector's items. Designed by Jim Woodring, these glasses. Here's a little explanation by Charles Bernard about its process. And some more groovy end papers. Oh, that's so cool. So there you go, guys. All my 3D comics. I probably forgot one. There might be some lingering on the shelf. I don't think you really care, though. But I just had to get that out of the way. I just had to show these off. And like I said, if there is an app or they're going to have one in 10 years, this video will be a lot better and maybe even kind of cool. So, but until then, that's fine if you haven't watched this one all the way through. I get it. But I do have to document everything in the Academy's collection before I die. So I had to get that done. So thanks for watching, guys, and I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.